Okay, well, it looks like we've got quite a few people logged in, but I think in the interest of time, we're going to get started. And you should be able to see the presentation on your screen. In a slide here, Rob is going to share the link that if you would like to download the presentation, it's actually available in English and Spanish if that is easier for you to follow along with. But welcome to this year's annual PSA Trainers update. We're really excited that you could all join us. I just wanted to go over a few quick items before we get started. First of all, everybody's going to be muted on this call. We will have opportunities for discussion and some questions throughout the presentation. By all means, if you have a question, feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A or raise your hand, and I believe we should be able to unmute your line if you would like to ask a question verbally. We are recording this session, so if you're not able to stay for the entire presentation, it is scheduled for an hour and a half. We may not take that entire time, or we may take that entire time. We're going to have some opportunities for discussion. So depending on how much time we spend there, we are planning to have this go until about 3:30, but it is going to be recorded and it will be available on our website in a few days after we have a chance to upload that, along with those PowerPoints that are available in both English and Spanish. We'll make sure that we send this out through the listserv as well, just so you get a notification when it is available. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to the PSA's director, Dr. Betsy Bin, to get things kicked off for the afternoon. Betsy?
Thanks, Gretchen. Again, I want to add my welcome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I'm looking over at how many folks we have on the call with us, and that's a lot of folks taking up very valuable time to be with us. So we really appreciate you taking your valuable time to spend with us. We're going to use it as wisely as we can to give you updates. We're going to talk about changes that we've seen in the team, some training metrics updates, and like we usually do on these calls, we're going to move around within the team so you don't have to listen to one voice the whole entire time. We're going to talk about some remote and online training updates, policy updates and reminders. This really comes from what are we changing, and keeping in mind that we change things in response to people saying this isn't working for us or it really needs to be updated. Obviously, COVID threw us some curveballs, so we updating policies and also reminders. What are we seeing over and over again that we can tell you about to make your interaction with the PSA better and to make your trainings better? We're going to go over FDA updates that have been kind of slim this year, but we're going to cover those. We're going to tell you about our Spanish language program efforts, and this is one of probably the biggest changes this year. And we want to share some information we have and really encourage you, if you're working with Spanish language stakeholders, to collaborate with us, to engage with us in this effort, because we think it's really important. And we're going to give you some international updates on PSA funding and our current timeline as we know it. And then Gretchen's going to finish with awards and achievements. So that's what you're going to get in the next hour and a half. And we'll go as quickly as we can, but we'll spend time if there's questions. So there's the chat box. You can raise your hand. Just let us know if you need help. All right. So here you can see the PSA team as it is. Now, for those of you that may have missed last year, we added Tommy Saunders in the Southeast, and he started in, I believe, March. Is that right, Tommy? March. Thumbs up. He started in March. And then in October of last year, we added Davis Blasini and Ricardo. And then when Don Steckel left to go to the California Department of Agriculture, we added Lori George this year to the program. And she's been with us about 4 or 5 months. Lori, I'm forgetting exactly what month you started in. May?
May. Yep.
May. Woo! I'm doing good today. She started in May and has been doing really well. The first week of her training, she participated in a Train the Trainer. So she sort of hit the ground running. It left us with 2 openings. When Connie went to the Washington State Department of Ag, we have that position open. We have conducted an interview for that position, and our search for that is ongoing. We have, in addition, offered, and the offer has been accepted by additional Spanish language extension associate. And so she will come on board December 1, we're hoping. So we'll introduce you to her next year, or maybe in the middle of next year if we add one of these based on some feedback we're getting from you. But that's the current update of the new folks on the team. Obviously, we still have some of the standards. Gretchen is still with us. Rob and Michelle are located in the Geneva office. And Toria Melville, who has been working with us on a casual basis, is now with us on a part-time basis. So that's good. And she's on the call today. And then, of course, we have Donna out in the Southwest. And she's just back from maternity leave. But we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Okay, so 3 of the best things that have happened since we talked last were the addition of some babies. Gretchen and Adam had Lander back in December of 2020. And that was the first baby we'd had in the program. So that was fantastic. But Lander was quickly followed by Jimmy, born to Tommy and Mary. And he showed up in May of 2021. And then little Bo, showing up a wee bit early, was born to Donna and Phil in August of 2021. So they don't really do any work. Pretty much they just make more work, but we're all super happy to have them on board. And it's fantastic to get to see them over Zoom. Be super duper if we could ever get to see them in person. So I wanted you guys to know about that, because that leads me to the next slide, which is that what has 2021 been for the PSA? It's really been a building year. With the 3 new people coming on in 2020 and Lori coming on in 2021, we've had to train and orient and get these 4 new PSA team members where they need to be. Tommy came to us as a lead trainer, so that was fantastic. Davis and Ricardo Davis was a trainer, Ricardo was not. And then Lori came to us as a tot. So we were lucky to get everybody on board, and they've been fantastic additions, but it really has been a building year. And I think if you talk to any of them, they will tell you what a crazy year it's been, also in the middle of COVID. We certainly settled into a new COVID normal, and now we're really trying to optimize our training schedules, develop longer term plans. You're going to hear more about that with the Spanish language outreach. The babies certainly were fantastic, but that meant juggling maternity and paternity leaves. Donna and Tommy are still on what order did I say it in? Donna's on maternity leave, Tommy's on paternity leave, just so I don't mess that up, which has been fantastic. But as you know, that makes work that has to be shuffled around. So really appreciate the rest of the team being flexible and picking up where things needed to be picked up. We are all, of course, preparing for new things that we see on the horizon. Subpart E release, we think, is going to come in early 2022. Traceability, the comment period closed in 2021, so we're hoping or expecting to see that. We're starting to see some trade disruptions. Obviously, everyone knows there's delivery issues, and anybody who's been trying to buy things to improve a house or move things around know that there's supply issues that may extend to the food industry, it looks like. So all of these things are things that we're talking about and preparing for. Next slide, which I think is a handoff slide to Gretchen, who's going to talk to us about PSA milestones.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share some of our PSA training milestones from the past year. And even though we all know that 2020 and 2021 have been exceptionally challenging in many ways, I think, especially related to training and outreach and having to transition to different mechanisms of training delivery, you guys have done some really amazing things in the past year. So when we look at the data, just in the past year, so from September of 2020 through September of 2021, we have trained over 10,000 individuals just in the PSA grower training course, which I think speaks volumes for who is on this call today to be able to take that remote training policy and run with it and really adapt your programs to make sure that growers still have access to this educational material and to the training, because there definitely were some barriers presented by the pandemic that I think you all reacted very well to. And we also, in the same time period, transitioned to a remote PSA Train the Trainer course, which we piloted in late 2020. We did several pilots actually in early 2021 as well. And then we made that final and are continuing to offer remote Train the Trainer courses because we recognize the need to continually develop the training cadre to address retirements and new hires and the expansion of educational programs and statewide programs. We'll talk about that. I think Lori is going to cover some of the upcoming remote Train the Trainer courses that we have. We hope that someday in the near future we'll be able to go back in person again. But for now, the Train the Trainer courses will be offered in a remote format. I wanted to also talk about this training data that we cover every year, but actually this is done on a quarterly basis. One of the things that Michelle spends a lot of her time on is developing these awesome metrics to help us better understand where trainings are happening, where there may be some training needs, and she has expanded this report exponentially just in the past year by adding some new graphs and some new data. So I wanted to let everybody know that that information is available on our website. Rob just posted that link. We post a summary of it. We actually don't post the full report because Cornell has some accessibility issues where we'd have to adapt every PDF that goes on our website, and those reports are very detailed. So if you are interested in receiving that full report, you can go to our training report distribution list and sign up for it. It's on the right-hand side of that page. Just put your name and your email address, and we'll make sure that every time a quarterly report comes out that you'll get an actual PDF copy. If not, know that the basic summary of those quarterly reports is always available on the PSA website. And a big shout out to Michelle and Rob for putting those together. A lot goes into looking at that data and making sure that it really represents the work that is being done by trainers all over the world. I also wanted to talk a little bit about our data sharing policy, just because over the past year, we have been seeing an increased number of requests for this data. And the reason why we decided to actually have a distribution list for those training reports is because we now provide more granular information that may satisfy your data inquiries. We do not share, we being PSA or AFDO, which we jointly manage a database with, we don't share contact information for any of our course participants, and that's mainly just to protect their privacy and make sure that it doesn't prevent anybody for fear of ending up on a list by attending the training, you know, a registry of farms or, you know, an inspection list or anything like that. We really want to make sure that the growers and individuals interested in coming to the course, their information is protected. So we never share any of their contact information or the names or locations of their farm operations, but we do have total numbers of grower trainings, total numbers of participants, broken down by country and then also by state. And then we also show, now that we have launched remote training courses, you can see that broken out by in-person courses and remote training courses. I'm showing you just a little snippet of that report here on this screen, but that is all available to you. It's public, and again, you can request to be put on that distribution list if you're interested in receiving that information. The most recent report that just came out goes through September 30th of 2021, and then we should have one again sometime shortly after the new year. So just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of what's available already to them and how you can get on that distribution list. I also wanted to highlight that in this slide I'm showing, this is breakout by region. So these are training participants and training courses based on the PHSMA regional centers. So you can see the Northeast, North Central, South, and Western regions, the courses that they've offered and the participants that they've trained. And I don't want you to compare by region, but one of the things that I really want to highlight here is how well everyone has transitioned to offering those remote courses. You can see the bars in orange are participants in courses that attended the PSA grower training through a web-based application like Zoom or something else. So if you have not made that leap yet and you think that you're interested in hosting remote grower trainings, Tommy's going to talk a little bit more about the remote training policy. We are extending that to allow those courses to continue to be delivered. And then if you ever need any help or tips on delivering remote courses, I'm sure any one of the regional extension associates or Spanish language extension associates would be willing to chat with you about things that have worked, things that have not worked in the past. We've also done several different webinars. Connie Fisk, who was previously on our team, she did several presentations and tips for Zoom. So that is all available on our website. But if you need help, please do ask, because we're more than happy to support you in whatever mechanism of delivery that you choose. And lastly, I just wanted to give you the snapshot of what's going on worldwide. These two maps that I'm showing here are just some of the new information that we include in those quarterly reports that were by request, and Michelle stepped up to the plate and pulled all that data and made this available. So what you're looking at here are grower trainings that have happened all over the world. I think what's really interesting is, you see that there's courses, especially in the Americas, that are happening. But when you go to the next slide, which is looking at course participants, there are much more distributed outside of the United States. And I think some of that may be because the course is more acceptable or accessible through remote grower trainings, but also just highlights the interest in continuing to offer these trainings internationally. And we'll be talking about that more towards the end of this presentation. Betsy will be talking about our international activities. And with that, I think I am going to turn it over to Tommy.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you, Gretchen. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Gretchen mentioned, we have a few slides here. First, talking about just some remote training updates. So as everybody is aware, I'm sure, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, back in April 2020, PSA created this temporary PSA grower training course policy to be remote training. The biggest update here you can see on new that you probably got within a trainer update within a week ago. That policy has been extended till December 31st, 2022. Again, obviously, as we mentioned before, there's a potential to extend that date further, but we felt giving everybody the entire year, that would be a good way to be able to plan your training calendars, and everybody would be fairly happy with that extension. A few other things here. You can get to the full policy as well, right at that link, and as well as those documents like Gretchen was mentioning, the FAQ document is also available. A big reminder, we still do have in that policy the 30 participant maximum for the remote trainings that we brought into effect on October 16th, 2020. That by no means means you have to fill your course to 30. I know most trainers that I've worked with prefer that 10 to 20 range. But we do have that set limit there. That isn't set though for in-person. So, that 30-person limit doesn't apply to the in-person course. As Gretchen also mentioned, a few resources that we've created or that have been created. First, to highlight the PSA Educators call that you can look back on back in February 22nd of this year, just with some delivery tips. So, a lot of things that I'm sure you as trainers have been doing, but if you want some more resources, you can find that there in that link. And then we also do have that next resource there. That's just a list of requirements and tips for growers to join in Zoom training meeting. Again, a good link to put in there with your marketing materials, or just if you have any questions or your growers have questions about remote trainings as we proceed through the next year. With that, next slide, Gretchen. All right. So we've gone through a few slides now, and we're looking to hear back from y'all a little bit. So we're going to have a few polls and then also take advantage of the chat as we work through these as well to give some answers, maybe if you do need to unmute as well. But we want to get a little more feedback from you. And some of this feedback goes along with some questions that we received or feedback we received ahead of this meeting. But yeah, first fill out this poll. Do you plan on offering a remote or in-person training in 2022? We just want to kind of gauge where everybody is. We'll give you a few more seconds there. We see a lot flying in. I think we have about half of the participants so far.
Now I'll give you another 5 seconds to get your response in here.
I might need more than 5 seconds. Okay, you were right. They only need.
All right, well, I'm sharing the results, so you should be able to see them now.
Cool. So we have a wide variety there. A good amount of folks are saying both, which is, awesome. I know a lot of that's regionally dependent as well as, where you're located in the world. I see a few people filling out the chat there as well. Myron, I also know it's dependent on, the COVID situation at that point. But yeah, no, so we had a good idea that it would be both, but we wanted to see, I guess, where everybody's heads were and how the remote trainings are going as well. So I think we'll move from that one. Move that off my screen. The next one, just you can fill out in the chat box as well, or direct message one of us. We want to know how remote trainings are going. More specifically, are there any challenges that the PSA should address with regards to those remote trainings? So maybe something you've experienced personally, you've been on a training team, or you've just heard of from your fellow trainers as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of good comments in there. I love the one from Martha about, it's great that we can reach more growers, but it's actually a lot more labor intensive on the training team, which seems counterintuitive because you're not actually going to a physical location to do a training, but to make it all seamless, as she puts it, I agree. It takes a lot of effort on the training teams. And I think we've talked about that on some of our previous webinars, making sure you have backup presenters, people to manage attendance, people to help troubleshoot Zoom, all of those aspects, which you probably wouldn't have in an in-person training.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say I'm seeing a lot of those. I'm also seeing, some of the other sides of things of, remote trainings are great, but there's still that need for in-person with our plant grower communities as well. Zoom fatigue, I saw that one pop up there. I know we've used that term a lot as well. But yeah, I agree with Gretchen there. PSA, I would say I would be your biggest advocate if someone ever came to you and said that, remote training is easier, you can just throw it together. We know it's 100%, more work possible than, meeting in person. So I'm enjoying all this feedback.
I think too, with the plant grower communities, we've really developed in some ways diverse ways to meet those needs. We have definitely been working with plant grower communities to make sure they get training during COVID. And sometimes it takes a little bit of weird juggling and extension offices, but we've managed to get it done, and I think get it done safely, which is important.
Yep. Oh yeah. See another one. Karen misses her props. I know we all miss those fun things. I definitely miss those. And the other one I wanted to point out, I know this one's been a question of while remote training's been great to reach some populations that we might have had trouble reaching, there definitely is the other side of it of, I see some folks talking about internet issues and the non-availability of internet. So, definitely understanding and weighing both those sides of, remote's been great in some aspects, but that, doesn't make up for all those aspects of in-person. So I like seeing all this.
I thought Dan's comment was very interesting about they're surprised to find that their participants are actually scoring better on the post test during remote trainings compared to in-person. So that'll be really interesting to take a look at going forward.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then I was going to highlight for Michelle Humiston there, Michelle Daniluk, writing about struggling to get in remote attendees books because they continue to give wrong addresses. And I know on our team, Michelle Humiston always does a whole lot of legwork for us, and we can't be more grateful, but I know that's a big headache for her as well. So yeah, that's one of those things. If the right address would just come in the first time, I think we'd all be in a happier place sometimes with that. Well, cool. Well, we'll move into the next question as well, but keep continuing to put your answers in for that question or sending us things. This one next, again, joining the chat, what activities or approaches keep participants engaged in the course? I know we've done, given some different examples, whether it be on different webinars or we've all participated in different trainings. But is there anything that you've found really works for you, or not so much, honestly? Oh yeah, discussions and polls. Obviously, we're taking advantage of those here, so we know they work to some extent to at least get some talking going. So
Yeah, we asked when you registered for this webinar, Betsy will be going over some of your responses for things that you really would like to see us continue to develop. And I know the clicker questions have been very popular, especially with the remote trainings, just as a mechanism of engagement.
I think it is good. I think it was somebody mentioned, they credited Don, Heather mentioned Don, having people look things up in their books using those manuals that we spend all this time trying to get them. I think that's really critical, mostly because it really gets them comfortable with it. So if they have questions later, they know how to look it up. I think that's critically important. Breakout rooms to build peer interactions, very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the direct engagement too is a great way to keep people on their toes, but it also it's challenging to call somebody out. But I think, once they kind of get into the flow of, I could be called out at any point in time, I really should be paying attention. It definitely helps keep their engagement up. The video monitoring does help too, although we recognize the limitations of bandwidth as a particular challenge there.
Nice. Sounds like everybody's getting some good engagement there as well. And like I said, continue to put those in the chat. One last question we have on this slide, and obviously feel free to, ask any others as we continue with this slide or go on. But this comes back from one of those questions that we received before this meeting with that poll that Gretchen sent out to everybody. PSA now has multiple translations of the grower training manual. And we know there has been some interest, but we want to gauge interest in having printed manuals accessible from Cornell's bookstore there. So in those multiple languages, currently only in Spanish and English available in print. So if you could fill out that poll as well there, or if you can't find the poll, feel free to put it in the chat as well. We'll give you maybe 25 seconds on this one.
And just as a reminder for everyone, we have currently in print format English and Spanish, and then we did launch Chinese and Portuguese this year, but those are only available currently electronically. And we hadn't planned to make print versions of those or future translations just because the number has been so historically low that it hasn't made sense financially to print them. But if that truly is one of the barriers, we're definitely willing to consider that as a potential option for some short run prints for people who are interested.
We might want to make Rob turn on his camera to make sure he's still alive after.
He might have passed out on this one.
He might be panicking right about now.
Let's say Gretchen, Norma had a good question in the chat, which you might be best to address there. It says, what about languages that are not offered? Can we use interpreters?
Can you use an interpreter?
That was the exact question, but I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about.
I think we're actually going to get into that a little bit. Donna's going to present some information about our alternate language policy that we're piloting right now. So we'll get to that in a few slides.
Yep,
yeah, so
that.
Yep, so that's very, very important, Norma. We do have a new policy and we will cover that. So if we don't answer your question later, do bring it back up to us, please.
Cool. Well, I guess we can share those results there. And again, pretty split there, but definitely some interest as well. So it's good to get this feedback and actually, see the numbers from all the trainers as well. I think we can stop sharing that part now.
Before Tommy, you go on, I just had one more thing to add, that if you have an interest in working on a translation, please do reach out to us, because several of the translations, including Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese, were in collaboration with other groups that enabled us to do those translations, because we only have so much funding in our cooperative agreement, and those covered Spanish and Chinese. So if you are interested and you have funding, we're more than happy to work with you all to produce a translation and have it laid out so that it looks and is the same as other equivalent versions of the PSA Grower Training Manual. So I'd probably be your best point of contact for that. So my email is glw53@cornell.edu. All right, sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's perfect. Thank you, Gretchen. So we'll move on to the next slide. Before we turn over to Donna, I think I've got 2 more slides here. We just want to give a little update about the online PSA grower training as well. So the online English course continues to be well attended. The course itself is, if you aren't familiar with it, a 3-week asynchronous instructed assisted course. So, in the course, you might say self-paced, but, self-paced over those 3 weeks. We do have something that was a little newer added in there. We've implemented a 14-day rule, which was an attempt to get participants engaged sooner so that, they're not leaving all the course material for the back end of the course as well. The online course is very variable and demanding, or it's more demanding than the remote in-person for participants. There's 6 required discussions that they must submit during that time period that are then graded by the course instructor. Right now, course instructors are only the regional extension associates and the Spanish extension associates from the PSA. And we are in development of the online PSA, or it's online Spanish PSA grower training course. And we're anticipating that to be launched late 2022. And if you do have more questions, or if you have growers that are interested in taking the online course, we do have the URL right there. They'll link you to the online course and provide a little more information about it as well. Next slide, please. So with that, a few stats on that course. We've had 29 sessions completed through April 2020 through September 2021. That's 414 participants that have successfully finished the course and receiving their certificate. 6 sessions are already planned and upcoming, scheduled into 2022. Again, like I said, they're currently led by PSA teams, so the Regional Extension Associates and the Spanish Language Extension Associates kind of rotate through who's instructing courses. And the course cost is $125, and that's going to include the certificate as well. I did mention the 14-day rule, which I think most are fairly aware of. We have had a few challenges with that 14-day rule, so we've kind of reassessed the language as well in the syllabus and throughout the course. Ultimately, the 14-day rule is requiring that the participants submit at least their first required discussion and submit that completed. So with that, we changed the language as by being completed. That means that the instructors had time to also grade that for completeness. So within the first 14 days of the course, if they don't apply by that policy, then unfortunately that participant can no longer complete the course. They could still have available to the material, but they would have to, get into another course or maybe look at one of the other trainings to actually receive the certificate as well. So again, just kind of giving that update on the online course. And if there aren't any questions on that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna.
Hey everybody, it's great to be back after maternity leave and to see everybody's names. So I'm excited to jump back into things. My job over the next few slides is to highlight a couple of newer PSA policies and also to remind you of some pretty important older policies. So jumping right in, one of the newer policies that I wanted to mention is this prerequisite for the Train the Trainer course. So effective October 1st, just a few weeks ago, anybody interested in enrolling in a Train the Trainer course must have attended at least one registered grower training course. And Tommy did a great job of going through some of the different types of grower training courses that we have: in-person courses, online, remote grower training courses. So attending any one of that delivery type of grower training course would meet this grower training prerequisite. And one of the reasons that we enacted this policy was based on feedback from both the PSA team and also other trainer of trainers that are teaching these Train the Trainer courses. A lot of us were finding that participants in Train the Trainer courses that had not received or had not already attended a grower training course were not really familiar with some of the regulatory requirements. They were not familiar with the actual course curriculum. And because during the Train the Trainer course, we spend so much time talking about the actual curriculum. So ideas for enhancing delivery, kind of like we discussed before, enhancing the curriculum, talking about challenges that growers come up with. So we thought it was important to require this prerequisite so that the Train the Trainer course is a little bit smoother of a delivery. And I will mention that hyperlink in the slide previously, you can see more information on that grower training prerequisite. Thanks, Gretchen. The other new policy that I wanted to talk about is this pilot policy. So this is a draft policy that we have been working with others to pilot. We're calling it the alternate language policy. And currently, to kind of talk a little bit about Norma's question, asking about delivery languages. Currently, all participants must receive training in a language that they understand, which includes having a PSA grower training manual that matches the language of the course delivery. So, for example, if they are English speakers, they must attend a training in English with an English grower training manual. And we realize that there are limitations to that policy. So this pilot policy is intended to address some of these language barriers. We're really hoping that the grower training curriculum will be made available to a wider audience through this pilot policy. A couple of examples of some of the challenges that we think this policy will address are allowing participants to attend who do not speak or read an available PSA manual translation. For example, Hmong growers, there's not currently a translation of the manual in Hmong. And it's also a very specific and relatively small population. So also participants who have limited literacy or no literacy. And then lastly, those participants who prefer delivery in a different language than that provided in the printed manual. So one of the examples that have become apparent to us are participants who can read English, but prefer to listen to the content, for example, in Pennsylvania Dutch. So maybe they are literate in English, but they were just more comfortable listening in Pennsylvania Dutch or other languages. So I will remind you guys that this is a pilot. We are still working through evaluation data from some of the pilot courses, but we are hoping that it's going to allow for trainings to be conducted in the language that's best for participants. So we're really hoping to make it a little bit more flexible and available to more growers. So as this option becomes adapted and finalized, we will make this available to other trainers. And if you have any questions about this policy, maybe you have additional scenarios that I haven't shared with you here or questions, please feel free to contact Gretchen. I'll throw Gretchen under the bus. And Rob included her email address at the bottom in the chat box.
I think the big thing, the key thing here is that we have had issues with people not following current policy and not following the pilot. So if you're working with groups of people that fit under the pilot, please contact Gretchen and go through that process and help us pilot it so that we can test it and finalize it. Because if you break policy, then you're going to hear from us because you're not following policy, if that makes any sense. So if you're going to do any of these that Donna just described, please do let us know so that we can make sure it fits with what we're looking at right now. We are working to finalize that policy, so hopefully it won't be very much longer, but for now, until that policy is final, please do, if you're doing any of those trainings, work with us directly.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with what Betsy said. Part of the pilot is additional evaluations, because we have a draft policy, and from talking with some of you trainers who have worked with us to pilot this, we've learned a lot of things. So we are working on sort of incorporating some of those things that we've learned. Okay. So the next couple of slides are really going to be reminders of policy that you're hopefully already familiar with. And the first one is this requirement for having a printed PSA grower training manual. I know this has already come up in the chat and discussion, but the requirement here is that printed manuals are required for both in-person and remote PSA grower training courses. And I will just say that for those of you who are still doing remote grower training courses, make sure you account for mail. I know that was a comment before, I think from Michelle Daniluk, that sometimes the postal service has been taking quite a long time. So you really have to account for that additional time if you are mailing the participants their manuals for a remote course. Participants must have a printed manual prior to the start of the course, or they will not be eligible for the training certificate. We are very strict about this because there's so much information in the grower training course. So having that printed manual allows participants that they can take notes, they can highlight important things, and it's kind of a reminder that this is a resource that they can reference in the future. And then the last thing about printed manuals is that participants cannot be expected to print their own copies. For those of you who have the grower training manual, it's quite long, and it would be a lot to expect them to print it on their own home printers. So it is something that you have to provide to them. And I wanted to also highlight a relatively new resource that we have available for you, and this is the electronic PSA grower training manual. This is a navigable PDF, and Rob, I think, is including the hyperlink in the chat box. This is, as I mentioned, it's a navigable PDF. I have it downloaded on my desktop, and I reference it frequently when answering questions. So this cannot be used as a substitute for the printed manual. So it is a really nice supplement. You can send a link to people, but it is really a supplement. It's not a substitute. Okay, so in Tommy's part, or in his presentation, he talked a little bit about the difference between remote courses, in-person courses, and online courses. As a reminder, if you want some more details on each of these courses, you can go to that hyperlink on our website. And we really kind of explain the differences between these three courses. The reason I'm mentioning it here is because we ask you to be very clear when you're marketing your courses, especially on registration websites and registration materials, so that participants really understand what kind of course they can expect to attend. So a remote course is going to be led in real time by instructors on Zoom, WebEx, other video conferencing software. In-person courses are, like the name implies, going to be in person. And just remember to let people know ahead of time what your expectations are. So if vaccinations are required, if you're requiring masks to attend, if there's going to be social distancing. I've spoken to some other people and they found that by being very clear in the registration or the marketing materials, sometimes they have higher participation because people might be more comfortable. And then lastly, the online course, this is hosted by eCornell, and I know Tommy has already talked about this. The thing I want to highlight here is that I've seen in other marketing materials that people will offer a remote course and they call it an online course. And then we get calls and a lot of questions because participants are kind of confused about what type of grower training they're going to be attending. So please be careful when you use that language. If you're teaching a course via Zoom, it's going to be a remote course, not an online course. Next. Okay, so here is your reminder about evaluations. As you guys know, we are very strict about evaluations. We rely on them. They help us adapt the course. So for example, it's in talking to you and seeing evaluations that we've been extending the COVID policy that allows for remote trainings. So I wanted to mention when talking about evaluations for remote trainings, these are an electronic evaluation. So for those of you who have taught remote courses, when you register your course with AFTO, you will receive an email, and that email includes a Qualtrics link. So you can send that Qualtrics link to participants and they'll fill it out electronically. And the reminder here is that we must achieve a 50% return rate. So if we see that for 3 or more courses that there's not a 50% return rate, if less than 50% of your participants are sending in evaluations, you're going to hear from us. So we usually reach out and say, hey, what's going on? Why aren't we seeing evaluations from your courses? And the result there is that your PSA lead trainer status may be revoked for delivering remote courses specifically. So you will hear from us, but we do have that expectation. For in-person trainings, just a reminder that for in-person trainings, you can submit evaluations by mail. If you are returning those evaluations by mail, we do have a new address that we're using. So these are going to go directly to the Produce Safety Alliance, no longer going to AFTO, and we include the address there. Now, as of last year, I believe 2020, there is an option for scanning in your paper evaluations. So again, we're talking specifically about in-person trainings. Participants are still expected to fill out those paper evaluations, but you have the option for scanning the paper evaluations and then submitting them in person, or I'm sorry, submitting them electronically. And again, when you go to register your grower training course with AFTO, these instructions are going to be sent to you via email. So this is more of a heads up, but you don't have to memorize everything I'm giving you here. You will receive the Qualtrics link or the instructions for submitting your paper evaluations in that email. Next. And just a reminder here, please do not reuse your evaluations. You've probably noticed when using the Qualtrics link or paper evaluations, there is a very specific course code that associates the evaluation with your specific course. So please do not reuse the evaluations. Use the specific one that was sent to you for that particular course, because if not, our evaluation data gets all kind of messed up. Next. Okay, so the last policy reminder that I'm going to share with you is just please make sure that you register your courses at least 2 weeks in advance. So you're going to be registering your courses with AFTO. I believe most of you on the call, it looks like you were actively training. So you're probably familiar with this policy, but please give AFTO at least 2 weeks in advance to process your course registration, because that gives them the time to generate the paperwork, generate your evaluation, and set up the course within the database. I want to highlight the second sub-bullet here. Retroactive registration is not accepted unless all paperwork can be presented. So this includes evaluations, course documentation, proof that you guys had PSA lead trainer and trainers in attendance, and it's subject to a $250 administration fee, because we've been noticing that people will host a training and then try to register it after they already hosted it, and it's been causing some issues on our end. And then also, if your training date, and I'm also going to say if your training date or the names of some of your trainers have changed, please contact AFTO again ahead of time to let them know, because it's going to change and impact your course ID and the evaluation link that you receive. Okay, the last reminder I want to give you is for specifically PSA lead trainers. So lead trainers are responsible for ensuring that paperwork is completed and returned to AFTO, regardless of who else is assisting with the course. And we've seen some instances where something went wrong in the course, maybe evaluations were lost, something else went wrong, and it wasn't the fault of the lead trainer. But this is a reminder that because those of you who are serving as lead trainers, you have that additional responsibility. So it's really your job to check on everything and make sure it's following PSA policy. And then all lead trainers who participate in the course will be responsible and subject to having their lead trainer status revoked if certain policies are not followed. And this is usually a discussion between PSA and you, but that policy does stand. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to Lori.
All right, thank you, Donna. So I'm going to talk a little bit about trainer resources and options that are available to you as a trainer. So As a trainer, you do have access to version 1.2 of the grower training module PowerPoints that are available at the Produce Safety Alliance website link that's posted on the screen there. These are available in English, Spanish, Chinese, and Portuguese. Also, it's going to be important as a trainer to make sure that you update your affiliation and other contact information on the trainer directory page. Follow the link on the slide, and there's a little click on there. It says update my entry. And in that section, that's where you'll be able to make your changes. This is going to be really important as we have had individuals and organizations in the past that were looking for trainers, but the information wasn't current on the site. And so if it's not on the site, it's harder to try and reach out to you. So make those changes if you need to have them done. Also, you do have a trainer update page at the link at the bottom there. This is where you're going to find past meeting notes, upcoming meetings, past presentations, such as the trainer refresher series that we've had, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Next. There's also a link from the main Produce Safety Alliance webpage to help access the general resource listing, which enables you to access additional resources and documents that are going to be beneficial to you as well as your growers. You're going to have the water and soil amendments and other information and links that are going to be useful to you. By clicking on the trainer resource link on the left, you can also access additional information that's going to assist you as a trainer, such as how to set up a grower training course, maybe some supplemental tools that can be used in a grower training class, as well as module activities to incorporate into your trainings. This is also where you're going to find the updated clicker questions. If you've been using those in remote classes, those clicker questions were updated in June of 2020 to make them more accessible for remote training. So it might be a good idea to check that out. In October and November of 2020, we did have a series of Train the Trainer refresher webinars that were created to review the content of the grower training modules. So we had those presentations. We discussed all 7 modules at a high level to help refresh your memory and to prepare you for the upcoming training season. These are going to be good resources for you to review. It's also going to be good and beneficial for those that are looking to complete the lead trainer application as well. So some of this review material will help you to finish out those applications. A Spanish Train the Trainer refresher series was completed in August of this year, and we'll discuss more on that a little bit later. Recordings for both of these series are available on the Trainer Updates web pages and on our YouTube channel. Next. We are planning, as we've been talking about earlier, we are now planning several more remote PSA Train the Trainer courses for 2022. Registration is now open for all the courses. Participants are capped at 18. We are aware that the cost may be a barrier, so we are looking to work with states and regions to see if we can find funding to support participants. If you know of someone who needs assistance, please let us know so we can work to find funding support. So we have all of the Train the Trainer courses listed. The English one for November is already filled, but December and February are Spanish Train the Trainers, and December and March are going to be for the English. Next. Okay, the next PSA Produce Safety Educators group for English will be on November 22nd at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The focus is going to be on traceability with one state's approach to improving traceability across the produce supply chain. Speakers are going to be Jennifer Trodden and Betsy Bin. These educator groups are open to everyone, so please pass along this information to others that may benefit. It's interesting to note that the produce safety educator groups have had 57 meetings held since 2013, and those should be available on your trainer update websites there. We also have a Spanish language educators group that has been launched, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. Next. Okay. So some of the new PSA resources that have been released this year, we do have module summaries that was developed to train a new PSA team members to be consistent with material presented and help deliver quality presentations. Rob, I believe, will put in the link, he already has, in the chat box to those summaries. This is going to help you. We found that it's been valuable for the PSA team members as they work to develop quality presentations. And we wanted to try and share it with others, so it would be beneficial to you. So recently it was updated, and there is a link in the chat box. Resources and materials that have been translated into Spanish can be found on the Spanish Produce Safety Alliance website. Additional information concerning the focus on Spanish language outreach and training will also be discussed a little bit. Betsy Bin and Donna Clements worked in collaboration with Dr. Alda Perez from the University of California, Davis, and others to create 2 USDA OREI funded projects, which further the study of the use of animal-based manure in organic agricultural practices. The 2 webinars, Managing Soil Amendments for Food Safety and Soil Health, and the second one, Science-Based Composting Practices, are available at the Organic Center website. Also, translations of the PSA Grower Training Manual are now available in Spanish, Chinese, and Portuguese, and additional translations into Korean, Ilocano, and Creole are currently in the works. And after that, I'm going to pass that over to Betsy, I believe.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to apologize, Lori. We're not sure what happened with that slide 28. It's not. Neither Gretchen or I know what happened to the appropriate slide 28, just because it threw you off a little bit. Okay, so I want to talk about the PSA Advanced Trainer workshops. Hopefully you guys know about this, but if you don't, we've been developing a new workshop in collaboration with the Southern Center. 2 courses were held, one in December of 2019 and one in January of 2020. And we had every intention of hosting one in Geneva, New York in August of 2020, and then COVID happened. And so we postponed it. And then we were going to do one this year in October of 2021, and COVID is still going. So we postponed that. We are planning to do one in June of 2022 in Geneva, New York, pending pandemic status. So that's where our hope is right now. We are in the interim finalizing the training materials and publishing resources for trainers to use during PSA grower training. So that's going to get at some of the requests for additional materials. But this is a 3-day workshop gauged for trainers who want to improve their overall produce safety knowledge. There's 6 modules. It is very hands-on, which is why we have not even attempted to move it to a remote format, because you really can't do it in a remote format, or at least we feel that way. So we limit it to 30 people because it is so labor intensive, and because we have to move people around and there's lots of hands-on activities. We will keep you aware of where we're at as that moves forward, and we'll certainly share the registration if you all are interested in participating. It's been the 2 times we've participated in or taught it have been really good, and I think it's been very valuable to those. I know there's some folks on the call that have attended, so if you want to put anything about it in the chat box or your experience, we welcome that. Okay, next slide. Okay, so regulatory updates. We are anticipating the release of Subpart E. We're okay, let's just be honest. We've been anticipating this for about 10 months now. I think we all thought we were going to see it shortly after the beginning of the new year in 2021. We then thought it was going to come at the end of summer. It's now looking like it might come in January of 22. I don't know. We are developing plans, though, for regional outreach once the revised Subpart E is released. That's kind of what the PSA is thinking at this point. We've had a lot of questions about what do we do with the curriculum if the new part comes out. We likely see it being used as V1.2 through the end of 2022. Here's what our logic is, just so you know what our thinking is. It's going to come out, we've been told it's going to come out in a draft format. So there's going to be a comment period. So whatever happens, we're going to see the new thing. It's going to be in a draft format. We think there's going to be a comment period. They're going to have that comment period. They're probably going to do meetings around the nation, and then they'll close it again to look at all the comments. Then they'll open it back up, hopefully with the final. In the past, when that has happened, it's taken a while. So that's why we think V1.2 is likely to be in use. If whatever it is highly divergent from what we currently have in module 5, 5.1 and 5.2, we will create supplemental slides. We'll create stuff for you all to use during training to try and balance what we're seeing, but we don't know what's in it and we haven't seen it. So that's kind of our plan. I want to pause there and see if the PSA team, anybody on the team want to weigh in anything else about that? That's kind of just what our logic is, just so you guys know what our thinking is. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. The other thing is that the FSMA proposed rule for traceability, the comment period, as I mentioned at the very beginning, closed in January of 2021. FDA did have a traceability challenge that got over 90 applications, and they said they've awarded it to 12 teams. We are going to talk on November 22nd about one approach one state has taken to trying to move the produce industry forward on traceability just on their own, not necessarily using the traceability rule because it's not final. So we don't know what's in that either. We suspect we will see that in 2022, but again, that's what we know. All right. Next. All right. So one of the things that has really taken up a lot of our thinking recently is a new focus on Spanish language outreach and training. Part of that is because with the addition of Davis and Ricardo, in addition to Laura Cunha Maldonado, who was our original Spanish language extension associate, we have a little bit more bandwidth. And having them on board has made us think differently about what we could get done. In addition, having them on board has created a conduit for us to find out what are some needs of the Spanish language stakeholders that we serve. So people are starting to share with us things that they need to be better at training or to better understand the PSR. And so that input is making us think differently about what we're doing as the PSA to serve those needs. We have found that there are growers who need training, but they're oftentimes tough to reach. And then we need more Spanish language trainers and lead trainers as well. So this starts to get at both domestic and international programming, right? Because there's a lot of folks internationally who speak Spanish, but we also have a fairly large population in the US who speak Spanish as well. So that's why we're kind of focused on the Spanish language. We have created a 2-page document that shares our vision of where we're going with the PSA program. And it's in draft format. We can share, I don't think it's posted online yet because it's in draft format, but we want to share openly where we think we're going because collaboration is what has made the PSA work. And this is the same thing. We're going to need collaboration with folks who are serving Spanish language stakeholders, who are Spanish language stakeholders themselves. So here's what we have underway. If you move to the next slide, here's some things that are going on. And if you're interested in collaborating with us, please let us know, and we're happy to expand that group to fit everyone in. So first of all is to build an effective communication strategy. And that really gets to why we're doing the 2-pager. It also gets at why we're trying to communicate well in advance, when our training's scheduled to happen, how do you get enrolled, all of that stuff. We're supporting PSA trainers and lead trainers through mentoring and educational opportunities. One of the things we've done is these new refresher series, like we did in English, we did one in Spanish. We want to recruit and train additional PSA trainers and lead trainers. This is the reason why we're offering grower trainings. That's where Davis and Ricardo are today, because we had a scheduling snafu, and they happen to be training today, so they're not here. But the reason we're doing these series of grower trainings is so that now, with this October 1 requirement of attending a grower training, these folks can then move on to attend a Train the Trainer. We want to support established partnerships that we've developed, but we also want to develop new networks with domestic and international organizations. And we want to strengthen extension and training activities in Spanish. So that's kind of the overview of the goals. And then next slide. You can see here this link to the refresher series, covered all 7 modules. There was a Q&A. The Q&A is obviously not recorded, so people can ask questions openly and get them answered openly. It was very good experience. And again, they're all online at that link if you want to listen to them. Next slide. How are we? The other way we're trying to build this peer group is with an Spanish language produce safety educators group. We've had one in English for a very long time, but we're trying to build this peer collaboration and share this important produce safety information, resources, training opportunities, and again, building a peer cohort. All those meetings are recorded and archived. The last one was October 20th. The next one is December 1st, because we're dodging Thanksgiving and Christmas, so we're having one December 1st. There is a sign up for that group, for the listserv. You sign yourself up. You don't need to email us. There's a sign up right there, and you can attend those meetings. We'll make sure that information goes out to you. All right. The last thing that has taken up a lot of time is trying to make sure that our Spanish website has those important materials translated into Spanish. So here you can see instructor resources and general resources that have been translated. They're all on the Spanish website. If you're interested, please go check them out. And again, this has been just a big focus. If you have any questions, want to collaborate, please do let us know. Next slide. Okay, so that sort of wraps up specifically the Spanish language things that we're working on. This is moving into international training opportunities. And over the years, PSA has established a lot of relationships with our FDA colleagues, our USDA colleagues, and a lot of international partners that are working in Latin America and really throughout the world. We're supporting international trainers to expand that cadre, to make people more available. I noticed Carlos Merlo is on the call, and he's in Italy. And part of the reason we've modified some of our policies about language is to increase the availability and the productivity of trainings internationally. So it's always been a focus, but we're really trying to respond when we get criticisms of some of our policies to make them work with folks who are working internationally. We've worked a lot with ICA. Davis and Ricardo have worked with ICA to deliver 2 presentations in their produce safety rule webinar series. We serve on advisory boards for ICA, and really trying to just be good collaborators. In the same way that collaboration makes our program work, we know collaboration is valuable to other groups. But we're looking for other collaborations. So if some of the stuff we're doing is of interest, if you think we can be of help, please do let us know. Because we know there are challenges. Manual printing, if you've been watching the chat box at all, we know getting manuals to people is difficult. We know requiring a printed manual is difficult. So we are working on getting those things done. What I do want to remind folks of, though, is the reason we require printed manuals is because the evaluation data tells us that the participants value that printed manual, that the participants benefit from that printed manual. And our goal is to have good quality trainings that are meaningful and impactful to our participants. So I want to make that clear. Like, the reason we have some of these policies is because we have the evaluation data to tell us this is important. And so we require the collection of evaluations because we learn from them and because we can make then informed decisions about what's best to do for trainings. Next slide. Here you can see our Spanish website. Hopefully you guys are aware of that website and everything that goes on there. But there it is, along with the link, and I'm sure Rob just popped it in the chat box. Thanks, Rob. Next slide. All right, so when you signed up for this webinar today, there were a series of questions and you shared, and we're listening. So I do want to talk about some of the things that came up there and tell you that there was too many things to add for today, but we are looking at all of them and addressing them. We talked about some of the subpart E and the PSR updates already. Ag water testing, hands-on activities, and engagement opportunities. We're constantly working on how to make the curriculum better. As we see new updates, we will create new materials to move that along. Somebody had a request for short videos, especially for worker and refresher training. I will tell you that I've had a USDA FSOP project with Trevor Suslow and Travis for a really long time. They got delayed because of COVID, but those are really hopefully going to be out. The translations are actually happening. Those are trainer video for field labor, trainer video for packing house labor, and then a manager's training video. Those are the three that are coming. There'll be basic training videos, but we will also work on other things to address refresher trainings and other things. So this kind of idea of short videos, we have booted around within the team a little bit in the past. And so maybe 2022, we'll see us put more focus on that because of some of that input. One of the requests was for lead trainer resources and development opportunities. This left a couple of us who are looking at this data sort of scratching our heads. First of all, we want you to know that there are fact sheets about how to submit a lead trainer application to try and guide that. We've done webinars, we've shared the scoring rubric, we've had the refresher series available. So I want to pause here, and if you submitted this as, I want more lead trainer resources, if you could put in the chat box what specifically you're looking for, that would be really helpful to us because we've created a lot of materials and we're not sure what we're missing. So I'm going to pause just for a second and give anyone who happened to submit that a chance to add to it.
And if anyone would prefer to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand and I can unmute your line if that's preferred, but feel free to use the chat box as well.
Okay, I'm going to move on, but if you please do put it in the chat box and we'll stop and read it back if something comes in. Continue to allow remote delivery. Hopefully whoever put that in is super happy to see we stretched it out to December 31st, 2022. We are thinking we're going to look at the evaluation data to make some longer term decisions about that. But for now, you have all of next year. We'll look at the pandemic, we'll look at some of the data, and hopefully that scratches that itch that came in as a comment. Regional workshops and advanced training opportunities. I just talked about the PSA advanced training and trying to move that forward. In terms of regional workshops, our regional extension associates would love to work on regional stuff if there's particular items that would be of value. So please reach out to us with more details about what you're interested in. I know in the past, Don and Connie have done some interesting things in the Western region. with some professional development, and I've done some stuff in the Northeast, but with some sanitation stuff that we've been doing. So let us know kind of what you're interested in, and we can work with you to make that happen. Resources for small farms, UPICs, community gardens, commodities such as nuts or aquaponic operations, and multilingual. Okay, so that's kind of a big group of things. Aquaponics, I know there is some work going on aquaponics that I believe, Gretchen, correct me if I'm wrong, that's being organized out of NECAFs. Is that correct? And I believe Davis from our group is sitting on that group. So there is some work being done in one of the regions on that. In terms of multilingual outreach, we're really focusing right now on Spanish language. But as Gretchen mentioned earlier, if you want to work on additional translations, let us know, because we have worked with other groups to get additional translations done. If there's an area where it's really needed, let us know and we'll troubleshoot where we can. In terms of small farms, things that are like very specific, like UPICs, community gardens, or specific commodities, if you can give us a little more data on what is needed, we are happy to make a list of things that we can work on. Our stretchy back pocket, which is where we have all those materials that sort of sit when they don't get pushed out the door. We're happy to add things to our list of things to do. And 2022 is going to be a great year for picking up some additional stuff. Now that we've got the new folks trained and they're on board, it'll be a really good time to give people tasks like that that are specific. So if you want to share specific things, please do let us know, and we're happy to do that. But we need a little bit more guidance on what is the specific need. Okay, more frequent check-ins and communications with trainers. I'm going to ask a question and I'd like to see a yes or a no in the chat box. Would you like to have a trainer meeting twice a year instead of once a year? So the question is, would you like to do this twice a year instead of once a year? Yes or no? Okay, not necessarily. No one's going to make you tune in. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Once is good. Okay. 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 Thank you guys for that. As it's looking overwhelmingly yes. I think it depends on the content. If nothing really changes. Yeah. So okay. Thank you for letting us know that and for answering in the chat box. We'll take that into consideration and figure out what we're going to do with that input as a team. But you know, maybe it needs to be a shorter, instead of doing this long hour and a half, maybe we can put together something a little shorter that's just updates, maybe at the midterm. I'm looking at you, Gretchen, Wall. That's why I turned my head to your pictures over here. So yeah, the other thing that was there that that didn't make this list, but that's been floating around in my head since I saw it this morning, was you know, more resources for BIPOC and other audiences. And I know Tommy and I have, Tommy in particular, has been working with some groups to reach out. I know Gretchen and I have been working with IFAI and the Indigenous group, as well as the entire PSA team that's had some Indigenous training, working with Indigenous growers. We are very interested in anything we can do to make this curriculum more inclusive with any population of people. So if there is something we can do to be helpful to move outreach forward to groups that are not feeling like they're included, please let us know. I have reached out to colleagues offering help, and I just want folks to know that if there's anything we can do to increase the inclusivity of our trainings, we will do it. One of the things internally the PSA team is starting to do is offering, now the word's going to escape me, where you have the words, somebody from the team give me the word I'm looking for, please. It's a new policy internally with the team. No, the printing, the voice.
Closed captioning.
Closed captioning.
Closed captioning. Sorry, that was terrible. Closed captioning. So within our own trainings, we're planning on offering closed captioning because you can do it Zoom. We're not going to make it a policy for everyone because we're not sure the platforms everybody's using, but that is something that we're developing a policy about for the folks where it would be helpful. So the deal is whatever we can do, that's what we want to do if we can make it happen. So please do let us know if there's things we can do to increase our inclusivity. Next slide. This is where we're going to ask you some more questions. So what can PSA do for you? I gave you a list of things, and when we were going over that, I kept saying we need a little bit more detail. Some of the things that were submitted in the questionnaire that you filled out were very broad, very vague. And so what we want to know is, what can we do to make hosting easier? What can we do to help you make trainings more effective for your audiences? And are there additional resources that would help you during training? So we need, specific information on what those areas are and what we can do to help. So I do want to pause here. And if you guys want to answer these questions in the chat box or unmute yourself or raise your hand, please do, because this feedback is really super important to us. The data you submitted to register for this meeting, we've already looked at a little bit. We'll look at it some more. And it really does change what we do as a group. We've certainly changed policy over the last year. We're always open to new ideas because we want this to be effective for you as trainers, because when you're doing a good job, the growers are getting a good quality product. And that's really the goal, is to help growers nationally and internationally reduce microbial risks because they know what they're doing. That's the key part.
So it looks like Laura would like to ask a question or provide some feedback. So Laura, you should be unmuted at this point, or you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
So something that we're trying to do at USU, at Utah State University, is work with our extension folks who have a lot of communication with the farmers, obviously already, to make sure that just everybody understands what's in this rule, and just for educational purposes. And one thing that we've focused on a lot in our communication with other entities that we think can help us kind of spread the produce safety message is being consistent in the way that we speak about the different parts of the rule, and consistent in the way that we organize the way we talk about the rule. And it's interesting because the rule itself is organized differently than the modules are for training. So the way that the farmers receive communication about the rule in the PSA training is different than if you're some other entity that's just reading about the rule, from the USDA and trying to understand it. You're going to download that information in kind of organized in a different way, depending on how you access it. So we're trying to make sure that people who are going to be just agriculture professionals who interface with our farmers, they understand that rule in using the same words and messaging and stuff that the farmers have learned about it in the PSA training. And so I mean, I don't know where I'm really going with that. It's just that that's something that we're working on, and that I think kind of the same way that the food pyramid or something is something that everybody in the whole country speaks the same way about. You know what I mean? If somehow produce safety could also start to organize around clear, concise messaging that everybody's kind of familiar with, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, so one of when we were developing the curriculum, one of the conscious decisions we made, good, bad, or otherwise, was to try and get the growers to use the language that was in the rule, because we suspected the inspectors would use that language. In some cases it panned out, and in other cases it didn't pan out so well, right? I'll use the example of antimicrobial pesticides. which when we developed the curriculum, they made us call them antimicrobial pesticides instead of sanitizers, when we knew good and well growers were going to call them sanitizers. So that one hasn't really panned out. But in other ways, talking about biological soil amendments of animal origin, that is now a term growers should know. So I hear what you're saying, and we tried very hard when we developed the curriculum to go down the road of knowing that one of the goals was helping growers understand the terminology in the PSR. And we were hoping that it would be used standardly. Didn't always work out like we planned, but that is definitely something that is extremely important, because if you're not using the same language, you're not having the same conversation. So I agree with you. If there's something you think we can do, please do let us know what that is. And we will certainly the team knows, I'm pointing in this direction because their pictures are over there. The team knows that we really strive for consistency in language because we know how important it is. So thank you for that comment. Okay, anything else? I just looked at the time and holy smokes, we've got 3 minutes. So that was the last of my, oh no, I have one more slide, which is our timeline, just bring you up to speed on where we're at. Right now, the PSA is looking pretty well funded until 10/1 of 23, which is 2 years essentially from now. If there's not additional funding that's identified, we are not really going to be in a sustainable situation. The money from FDA is about at half what we need. Right now, we have 2 cooperative agreements, so that's why it's doable. We, of course, will work on getting additional funding, and we're constantly working on that, but essentially that's where we're at. We always like input or ideas about, you know, how to talk about the PSA with funders so that it's clear what we're doing and the value. If you value what we do, we'd love to hear about why you value what we do so that we can use that in some of those discussions. Turn it over to you, Gretchen, to wrap us up and get us out of here on time.
Yeah. Well, I started out this call by talking about all of the accomplishments of the trainer and the training cadre that we have, but I think we need to recognize some achievements within our own team, including an award that Betsy received this year from the International Association for Food Protection. It's called the Elmer Marth Educator Award, which is presented to an individual for outstanding service to the public, IAFP, and in the arena of education and food safety. So that was a big accomplishment, and we're super happy that Betsy received that award this year, and she was able to attend the meeting in Phoenix in person. The second great news that we received was that PSA team members, including Davis, Ricardo, and Tommy, they received the Cornell Agriculture and Life Sciences Award for their participation in the COVID food safety response team. That was part of a larger group, including the rest of the members of the PSA team. Unfortunately, we weren't all eligible to receive the award because we've previously received an award from CALS, but they were recognized for their efforts through the Department of Food Science, who held pretty much weekly office hours related to COVID response for the food industry. So those have been really highly attended, and I'm glad they were able to participate, and the PSA team was able to contribute to those efforts. So congratulations to Betsy and the rest of the team for their participation in that. And just to wrap things up, again, thank you so much for your time today and for every day. I mean, every time I put the slides together for the number of trainings and the amount of outreach that's going on, it's not just our team, it's because of all the trainers engaging with the PSA and constantly striving to improve the trainings. I loved all of the ideas that you shared in the chat, and that sharing of knowledge is incredibly important both ways. We learn a ton from you all sharing your ideas, what's working, what's not, what are some of the barriers that we may need to address. So thank you for continuing to share your feedback. We did look very closely at the information that you guys responded to in the registration questions about, you know, what can PSA do for you in the next year? But please do feel free at any time to reach out to Betsy, myself, or any member of the PSA team if you have something that you think needs changed or some sort of need that we can fill. Some of the policies that we've discussed have come about because of challenges that have arisen or a need that was identified by a PSA trainer, and we've tried to adapt appropriately to those things. So please, by all means, we are much better at open dialogue, sharing honestly, even if it's not good things happening. We would rather know about that and be able to address and assist in that particular instance. But we welcome your feedback always. And we're really excited for a lot of good things to come. Betsy talked a lot about the new members of our team, and with new team members, there's new ideas. And the training cadre is always growing, and we're always excited to work with new individuals and new collaborations. And we're looking forward to going into 2022 and maybe some new and exciting things coming from FDA. We'll see. But we will definitely keep you all updated if there are major changes to Subpart E or any other regulatory changes. We'll notify you through the Psa Trainers listserv. We also have several other listservs which you may be signed up for. The general listserv, that one caters to everybody from growers, regulators to educators. You can sign up for that on our website. We also have several social media streams that Toria manages that has a lot of great information. YouTube is where you can find all of those videos, the refresher training videos in English and Spanish, along with some of the short videos that we've developed for use in training. So definitely check out our YouTube channel. And the website, both in English and Spanish, is a great place for resources. I know many of you responded that you needed more engagement activities for your remote training. So you'll find a lot of those on the website under trainer resources for your use. I wanted to let you know that the next annual meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. I know we just discussed potentially having more frequent updates, so maybe there will be one at the halfway mark, especially if something comes out regarding ag water or something else big that may shake up the curriculum a little bit. But for now, plan on October 25th of 2022 as our next annual call. So I just, again, want to thank everybody for joining today. We did record this meeting. We will have it posted on our website probably early next week. Toria goes in and updates the closed captioning because it's not always perfect, but we will make sure that that is available to you if you weren't able to attend the whole meeting or you jumped in late on our website next week. So with that, anybody else from the PSA team have anything to share?
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, team, for putting everything together and presenting. Thanks, Gretchen, for really leading us off with a great presentation this time around. And thank you all for staying an extra 4 minutes. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you, and have a great day, everybody.